Hey, welcome back. Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel, where I'll be reading from the Babe in the Woods series. We got through Babe in the Woods, Building a Life, one log at a time. We're going to continue tonight with Babe in the Woods self-portrait. I introduced it last time. We read the prologue in chapter 1. But I just want to step back a little bit. So in December, I do these sink tail things. And we actually took the sink tails down here because since December, I've been fostering puppies for the Humane Society because their shelters are full. So I just want to give you a little update on the last puppy scene that we shot down here with this little guy named Bear. That's who he was, his name when I got him. So let me just get him right now. Hi, little bear. Hi, little bear. There he is. Oh, yeah. So part of the process of adopting a puppy from a shelter is they have to go through all their medical situations. So he's been chipped, inoculated, and had a little surgery. And one was a little unexpected. He had a herniated umbilical cord. And so he's not feeling that great. He just had a pain pill. But now he's officially ready to be adopted. I've had him, I think, since December. I think he's about 14 weeks now. He was thrown out at a gas station near where I live, when the temperature was 30 degrees. Luckily, somebody brought him to the Humane Society, and we have a great Humane Society in the Dalles, Oregon. Everybody applaud them. Oh, see, he doesn't feel so good. He doesn't feel so good. And anyway, I think he's got a good foster home. Now he's all ready to go. And I just wanted to just let everybody see him again. Somebody at the vets told me today, which was kind of sad because she was having her dog of 17 years put down, and she saw him, and she wanted to take him, but I said, I think he's got a foster home. And she said he's a Chiweenie. I said, what's a Chiweenie? And she said, it's Chihuahua and Dachshund. And I'm like looking, okay, well, maybe this is why his ears are so long. So we're going to see, well, maybe we won't see, but I think we might see what you might evolve into. Okay, I'm going to put my little guy back into his little bed. He says, yeah, I don't feel so good. Remember last time he barked at your camera? Well, now he's drugged. Okay, baby, I'm going to put you right down in here. So, we're going to get into chapter 2 tonight, but I want to do a recap of what happened last time. I did an introduction of self-portrait with recapping how I got to the cabin, why I was there. I think I did the prologue on foreshadowing of shooting a bear. And after I'd been at the cabin in the winter for so long and having to backpack out in the isolation, I decided I needed to leave. And I enrolled in a community college in Eugene, Oregon. And what's interesting about when this book first came out, a lot of the reviews on Babe in the Woods self-portrait came from college kids who left home for the first time, and they're trying to figure out how to survive in a city on their own and in college. So I'd been on my own for a long time, but then leaving from the cabin, which was isolated and wilderness, going into a city was another transitional aspect that I had to negotiate, and that I found there was a lot of people in this circle who had similar experiences. So, chapter 2, Trying on a City. At the start of January, I closed the door on the cabin, its logs still seasoning after spring's cutting. Holding Tamarack, remember Tamarack is my cat, Tamarack in a burlap sack, I shuffled down the snowbound mountain, strapped into the same red backpack I shouldered up to this raw land nearly a year, or what feels like a lifetime ago. If I look back, I'd start bawling. Only years before, a dream that log cabin had manifested security reclaimed. It was hard to leave. The first year on the mountain, I'd grown to know every evergreen trail, nook and cranny, cutthroat trout and the dipping pool, and chipmunks in the woodpile counted as some of my most confidential friends. Leaving them meant I had to trust the regional tourist brochure on the car seat and its caricature leading me to a friendless city. All I had to do, according to a man in a hardware store, was keep myself warm and fed. A summer before, a hardware store clerk had assured me of these self-preservation requirements after a convoluted line of questioning. His first being, "Those for your husband?" "No." "Then what are you going to do with them?" "Spike down log ends," I answered, shifting the 50-pound box of 20-penny nails on the counter. I was wearing cutoffs and tennis shoes, not Carhartt and Levi or cowboy boots or steel-toed Timberlines like his regular testosterone-encumbered customers. Curiously, surrounding the asymmetry between my comparatively petite physique and my hefty purchases prompted the clerk's next inquiry. "Where's your parents?" "Dead," I answered, his second unsolicited question, consolidating one word that both my parents were killed by the cure they sought in hospitals when I was a kid. "Hey, kid, I grew up orphaned too." The clerk leans into the counter, his belly bulging over his belt like bread dough ready to be punched into a manageable loaf. He adds, "Pretty much raised myself. As long as you're warm and have enough to eat, you'll be okay." He looked at me like I should know what he meant. I did. I paid for the nails, lifted the box myself, not to show him I could carry half my weight, but to show him I was okay. Living in a backwoods home was proof that I could take care of myself. I was just not certain if I could keep myself warm and fed in a place without trickling creeks, ponderosa pine peaks, timorous, finned, and furried, palm-sized friends. After digging the Gremlin out, remember the Gremlin is the little green American Motors car I had. After digging the Gremlin out, a good friend is my first stop on my way to Eugene. Relieved to be out of the sack, Tamarack sniffs the arm of Jim. Remember, Jim is the guy who actually helped me build the cabin, actually built the cabin with me, taught me everything I knew. Sniffs the arm of Jim, a chiseled, statuesque father of 2 toddlers who I hired to help me to build my cabin. He will continue to help me by caring for my cat until I return in the spring. With a covered wagon at my back, I aim the Gremlin toward a place sealed with uncertainty. In Eugene, I discovered a mossy, wood-stove, gloomy university town mushrooming between the wave-laced Pacific Ocean and the clear-cut Cascade Mountain Range. But there's not a seal in sight at this spot on the map named after another dead adventurous man. So the references to the seal and the wagon were pictures on, those maps you can find in tourist places. That's how I found the map that showed Eugene. I enrolled in a community college and found a place to live. A 1952 trailer bought for cash, calculating it was cheaper than paying rent and it could be sold, so I might break even when I left this dog-legged metropolis. Like anything manufactured so long before and neglected, that trailer had its share of problems. A corroded metal roof, needed tarry patching. The only regular movement in the bathroom was backed up plumbing. The oil heater I could never spark to heat with an outside oil tank I couldn't afford to fill were beyond my handywoman skills and college student budget. Logs I knew, they were round and smooth and I could carve and chisel them together to fit true. Working around things with sharp corners and written directions discombobulated me as much as figuring into a city. Eugene's spongy climate seeped through the tinny walls, further warping the birch paneling. The original burnt orange shag carpet smelled like mushrooms. A space heater attached to an extension cord warmed the fungal air enveloping my ankles. Beyond this electrified sphere, dizzily chill spilled fast as wildfire inside the trailer. I yearned for the sure and constant warmth of the wood burner in my log cabin and the simplicity of taking a leak freely in the forest just as much as it pained me to live in a cold, leaky can and to flush a colicky toilet. In an effort to create comfort in that trailer, I layered on sweaters. To simply live in a city, I was generating expenses never figured in the simple life I had left at the cabin. To save money, I let my car insurance lapse, park the gremlin on the shady side of the mobile home park, and relied on an emerald green Peugeot 10-speed for transpiration. Biking about on my second day in Eugene, I was T-boned at an intersection. "He's okay. I'm all right." I tried to console the hysterical woman driver crying down on me. I was picked up out of the street by strangers and led into a music store where police arrived to write up a report that required my new city address. Numbers stuck to facades hadn't concerned me on the mountain. It was shiver and shadows that guided me home and signed my residence in the forest. That's why I could only recite landmarks. There's a little brown grocery store in the corner to direct the officer who drove me to the trailer. Hey, if anybody's in Eugene listening to this, it was on Garfield. And there used to be a lumber mill there. It was right by the railroad tracks. Later that week, an insurance man wearing a soft gray suit was called to those same numbers. He gave me a check to cover the cost of a new pair of Lees, a tire, and a rim. January through May, I pedaled the newly trued Peugeot across town to attend classes where I was usually marked late. Not because I biked slowly, but because I dragged my feet to get to a place that graded by percentage points, not common sense. I did not assimilate well into an educational environment that felt as unnatural as the overhead lighting. In fluorescent lit cubicles, I penciled answers to tests that would never be given on the mountain. I was a whiz with a chainsaw and a poleaxe, but my cutting skills did not match my competency in math class. Nor did I fit in with the collegial extracurricular clubs or in hubs of students' camaraderie. On campus, even in new jeans and a clean pullover sweater, I stood out like a babe out of the woods, as skittish around people as once were the trout and chipmunks who tamed me. After classes one day, I encountered a hobo while picking blackberries on the gritty brushes beside the train tracks just beyond my trailer's folding doorstep. He was also picking berries, putting them with no delay into his mouth instead of a dinky pink plastic bowl like me. He was real hungry, he said when I nodded his way. After a few words which did not include his name, I named him Hobo, because I assumed he was part of the pack of homeless men camping beside the railroad tracks beside my trailer. Like others I'd seen at blackberry bushes, this man was unshaven and wore clothes the color of the rails he rode and the ground upon which he slept. I invited him in and prepared to entertain his hunger. Every egg in the refrigerator was cracked into an exfoliating Teflon fry pan and served under a patchwork quilt of melted Kraft cheese slices. Without delay, Hobo, holding his fork like a dagger or a lifeline depending upon one's etiquette perspective, attacked the full plate. "Yes, thank you, ma'am," he said, when I asked if he wanted another piece of bread. I'd never been called ma'am before, and though flattered, this is as far as my matronly generosity extended, because I did not offer to let him use the toilet. By the time he left, I'd fed him all my food except for a cellophane sack of popcorn stored in the trailer's overhead cupboard. I knew people back in John Day who were willing to help me when I was still a stranger, and it was they who had taught me to reciprocate the same. That night, popcorn and blackberries set my place at the dinner table. On the bike back from school the next afternoon, I stopped at the grocery store, weighing my knapsack with sardine tins just in time for a different hobo who came to my door. He did not go back to the tracks as hungry as I found him. The next morning, as I headed out for school, I found yet another hobo pacing at a respectful distance from my trailer steps. Word spread fast down the line of vagrant men who lived in brambles bordering the rail lines a stone's throw away from my trailer. I never asked any of these men, who must have been loved, if only briefly as babies, how they grew into men who ended up on the wrong side of the tracks. I did, though, give everyone who waited beyond the doorsteps a can of sardines. My brother once told me that food should be the only thing given to people down on their luck. Giving them money, he advised, when I first observed him handing apples and sardine tins to a destitute man in a grocery store parking lot, was likely to fund what had cost them their luck. One afternoon, I answered an unexpected knock on the trailer door, and a scraggly man backed away as I opened it. He stood below the last step, holding his right arm like a dying baby, rocking it back and forth and whimpering like a wounded toddler. He pleaded with me to take him to the hospital. On the landlord's side of my jam, I was framing worry and voiced my consternation to the doorstep stranger. "How can I trust you?" I said, hugging my arms across my chest. He mumbled a reply, stared at the palsied limb, and started to cry in snotty spurts. His rheumy eyes were glued to injury until he raised his focus to my face, a glancing blow that my sense of moral obligation failed to dodge. He was only sniffling by the time the engine warmed, and he kept his eyes fixed ahead in the passenger seat of the Gremlin. I drove without insurance, which he also lacked. At the hospital, I helped him out of the car. He followed as I led him to the emergency room, a place I knew by my own accounts. Because the hand on his injured arm was swelling blue, he had trouble holding a pen to fill out paperwork, so I did it for him, confirming my diagnosis. "His arm is broken." I nodded at the sterile receptionist and back to the man's tattered shirt cuff. Even though this man was disheveled and shattered, I knew he had on occasion to be clean and whole in the love of a mother, even for a birthing moment. This man could also be somebody's long-lost brother, and so I treated him like one and gave him the last folding money in my wallet before leaving this man in the hands of care. Only a day after dropping off the hobo at the hospital, I returned to the trailer to discover my own brother sleeping like a baby under the doorstep's shady belly, and mistook him for the bum he appeared. He uncurled when I kicked his boot sole, slunk out, and stood brushing his jeans. Since I'd last seen Mark, his premature receding hairline had matured. Beneath his domed forehead was an attempt at a handlebar mustache, and a bearded growth sprayed like semi-manicured squirrel tail below his chin. I invited in my not-so-long-lost brother. "Nice place," he said, looking around the cramped space, though we'd both been raised in a nuclear family, proper and in much plush and polished places. "Mind if I stay a while?" he asked, drinking sardine oil straight from the razor-edged tin, refusing the fork and china plate I extended. Mark bunked down, unrolling his sleeping bag on the living room floor, just 3 feet from the kitchen refrigerator. The first night he plugged up the toilet. "Buy a snake," he said, describing it, and I did the next day at Ace Hardware, adjusting its hard coil through my fabric knapsack as I biked home from college. That night I watched my brother ream out the plumbing. The next afternoon, I cut algebra class and returned home early to find Mark outside the trailer drinking Jack Daniels with two unfamiliar hobos, empty sardine cans littering the pavers. Late next afternoon, I returned to the trailer to find Mark gone. There was a note taped to the snake. Always wind it back when you're done. On the kitchen counter, another note was tucked under a nearly drained Jack Daniels bottle. Traded you for some sardines. By the end of May, I was more familiar with hobos than Eugene's academic or social circles, and I was itching to get home. On the mountain, wildflowers would be having a hoedown. Spring runoff would send the creek frothing against its bank, welcoming as a Labrador's ecstatic slobber as it greets its master home. Goshawks and magpies would be scratching hieroglyphs in the blue yonder, and I needed to join in this wild party and run, wearing only moccasins. In Eugene, when I wasn't biking across town or feeding guys down on their luck, I was sitting under fluorescent lights in white rooms with sharp corners and other dimwits like me. During a typing test in journalism, so many words per minute with only 5 mistakes, my wheeled desk chair rolled back and the IBM Selectric fell in my lap. The typewriter was electric and my senses were not. I retested on a manual Olivetti and barely passed. It was early June by then, final grades mailed, and time to leave this self-imposed academic spell. Turning my back on a seal on the map, I headed to a point pictured by a covered wagon. All right, that concludes chapter 2. So I spent some time in Eugene and then returned to the cabin for the summer, which will continue. Before I sign off, I did introduce the little puppy bear, but I want to say something. If you are taking in foster puppies, you need to also make your own dogs feel all-inclusive, because Zachary's had some real issues. So I just want to say, just treat everyone accordingly. Make sure everyone is loved the same. Everyone gets a special attention, which means you're going to probably spend 3/4 of your life taking care of dogs. Okay? We're all getting along well. The little puppy is cueing off the other puppies. So we will see you next week. I don't know where you are. It's cold here. But remember, stay hydrated. Bye-bye.